do the nice fade.
That's a nice fade. Like, right, live fade.
Oh.
All right, everyone. I am getting this worked out. Here we go. Thanks for everyone for being here today. I think we all know my illustrious guest today and good friend Corey Congilio, fellow TrueFire instructor, confidant, pal. People always wonder, like, do you know Corey? And I'm like, yeah, I know Corey. He's one of my good friends. Yeah. Talk all the time, So we are psyched to be hanging out together. I just want to address, I know we were supposed to have, Corey did me a big favor. I was going to have him on later in the month, but I messed up on my scheduling. And so I called Corey. I'm like, can you do tomorrow? Or this is on Thursday. And you said, sure. So you saved my butt again, saved my butt again. And so so here's Corey today. And we have a little stuff just to talk about. Next week we have Robin Ford. And following week is Scott Sherrard. And then after that we have Andy Wood coming up the next week. Hi. And we got some more people coming in. But I'm super psyched to have Corey on now. And as you guys all know, usually we just talk about stuff at the top. Corey's got some great stuff going on right now, as usual, and I'm going to leave it to you. What do you think, Corey? What's going on? What you want to talk about today, and we'll do some playing.
The one that's most pressing is this little Martin guitar that I'm giving away. Did that to promote the acoustic crossover course I did, which was about an acoustic course that was like, hey, you play electric guitar all the time. Somebody throws an acoustic guitar in your hands, and this doesn't work on acoustic guitar. So you want to be able to kind of find some ways to navigate the instrument but still sound like you kind of know what you're doing. And that was a fun course to make. It's fun when you pick an idea out of the clear blue sky and it becomes a course, you know. So I decided to give away this little Martin Jr. guitar. It's 000C Junior 10E, big long name, but it means it's a junior 000 size with a cutaway pickup. Actually sounds really, really good. Those guitars are made of all solid wood, and they it's a nice little guitar for travel or just picking around on the house. So there's only a few days left, about a week. May 15th is when the contest closes, and I always announce the winner of contests on my live streams on my channel every Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern, and then of course the winner is emailed and notified and that sort of thing. So on top of that, always putting out material on my website. Started uploading a lot of videos to my TrueFire channel. It's a $10 a month subscription that I like you, it's just like, man, like we do this stuff all the time. What can we actually keep posting on a weekly basis? It's challenging. But I just started going back and say, okay, I'm just going to put videos out with the methods in which I learned as a kid, scales, how to apply them, technique stuff, all that kind of stuff. And so I do that every week, and it's a lot of fun. It's been a way to kind of point other students so I don't have to waste their time doing that like for an hour. I can say, hey, let's talk about some more conceptual stuff, and then you can go to that channel and you can get the nuts and bolts there, and there's PDFs and tracks and all that kind of stuff too. Right. So that's going on. Courses on my site. New merchandise, which is a lot of fun.
Looks great.
Thanks a lot. Launched that last week. Been doing well. T-shirts, coffee mugs, stickers, a lot of the mustache silhouette stuff. Just following in the footsteps of other mustached guitar players. But yeah, lots of fun stuff going on. Just working here every day from home, making new content. And
then your YouTube channel is doing great, man.
YouTube channel is starting to kick really, really well. Got a lot of new videos up there every week, something new. Usually lessons, but lots of times it's a gear demo. Mm-hmm. I try to go 2-to-1 with that if I can. Right. We're having a good time at the old Corey Congilio compound.
Lockdown. All right, so you want to just do, as you know, everybody knows, we just do a little lesson in the top. You can just talk about something, real simple. Some of the stuff that you were talking about in your changes there, anything you want. And you have that you got some great courses, and somebody's already asking about you talking about like the minor 7 flat 5 or, whatever you want to talk about today. And then we'll get back to just talking shop like we do all the time, pretty much like every day on the phone.
So what I was doing, earlier this week, we had some pretty bad storms in Nashville, and we lost power. And I can do something really fun. Check this out. If you look behind me, Watch behind me. Oh, the candle's turning on.
Look at that.
And then they'll flicker. And then I got these other lights. It's all about the ambiance, you know.
Right. I'm stealing ideas here.
Oh, man. It's nothing I haven't stole from a bunch of YouTubers already.
We can talk more about this later. Okay, sorry. I'm just...
but anyway, so I made this Instagram post about like learning by faux candlelight, and I pulled out this this Chick Corea transcription book I had from this record called Paint the World, and I love that electric band record because it's a little bit more palatable for somebody who's not into like a lot of crazy fusion and jazz. There's some really great blues type stuff, but a lot of really fun chromatic lines that the band plays. But Chick is like the master. He and like Herbie for me were the guys that like do this crazy rhythmic phrasing. And he plays a song in F called Blue Miles. It's like a little Miles Davis tribute. And he plays this cool lick. So he kind of does this weird thing where he starts on the 9 and the 13, but it's not so much about the notes. It's the triplet thing that he's doing where he's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, ba-da, 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 ba-da-da-da-da-da. So I said, what if I move that, you know, and just take that rhythmic phrasing idea, and tried to put that over some blues. Because what he does really well is he plays that kind of idea. And if I played it against just an A shuffle like I was doing earlier today, turn up a little bit. You're not going to play that through the whole solo because it's going to sound really weird. It's just an idea to kind of, you know, re-accentuate the sentence in a different way, because we might be going, just doing like a normal kind of any triplets or just swung eighth notes. If we take little rhythmic ideas like that, it can kind of spruce up our lines a little bit better. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So now let's make it less obvious. 3, 4. We're gonna go 1, 1. The reason I really emphasize that, and you're like, I might never play that. That's kind of a weird thing. But, you know, I was listening to Scott Henderson one day say, you know, outside playing has as much to do with rhythmic differences than harmonic ones. And you notice how if we keep doing that kind of first two notes of the triplet, ba-da, 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 it's going to sound weird over and over and over again. But it's more of a twist. It's more of like 3, 4, 1. You know, once you do stuff like that, it kind of gives you a break from playing the same old physical rhythmic ideas that you have. So that's just something I stumbled on. I was like, man, I had an instructor years ago, and he used to make me kind of rhythmically transcribe Herbie Hancock solos. Actually, it was only one solo because it took forever and it was really hard to do, but it made me think more like that. And I think a lot of people say, oh, I really love some of the lines that you play. I'm not playing anything other than like major and minor pentatonic, usually, or just kind of in the box stuff. But I try to mix it up rhythmically enough that it doesn't bore me and sounds fun. So that's kind of something. And I can, what I'll do is I'll just put I'll put that thing together. I'll put that line together and make that a PDF. So if you guys email me, I'll send that to you. It's a fun little lick. Could be useful for you.
Can you then on your webpage I can get it, or your website, or how do they email you?
Email my website.
Okay.
They can email Corey@CoreyCongilio.com. There's a contact form on there too. So feel free to do that.
Great.
I usually make stuff like that available. So that's the kind of stuff I've been just kind of tinkering around with here and there. And we can talk about anything else. I mean, what's your take on that, Jeff? Because the phrasing concept that do you find that it's often like hard to teach? But I felt like with something like that, if we said there's a real specific idea there, that to me makes it a little bit more palatable.
Well, I do the same thing with people. I usually don't. This is usually about you these days, but yes, the same thing. Like I do the idea of like rhythmic motif and a melodic motif, and then you practice it around the fingerboard. And I tell everybody the same thing who've been in the lockdowns, and I know you and I feel the same way. When you're doing these things, you're practicing. You're not necessarily performing. So you beat the heck out of the idea, so you get it under your fingers. You play it everywhere. So when you want it, it's in your back pocket to pull it out and play it on in a live situation. So that's, I think, a really important way to look at it, because it's like I said, just that rhythmic pattern. After a while, if you overdo it, it loses its effectiveness.
What if I talked to you like that all the time?
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Really
right.
Weird.
It sounds like we're on a Skype call. Is what that sounds like.
Did you think my audio was sputtering? You're like, oh shit.
Yeah. Funny.
No, but and it's another cool thing too is a lot of times when you start transcribing things from somebody like a piano player or a saxophone player, you're doing things like in that line he goes. Alone, that alone is like a string skipping.
Right.
You might go. Just try things that take your hands for a ride, or a little bit different than you'd normally do. I do that stuff. We were talking about I try to get a little bit of practice in every morning.
Right.
I take the dog out and try to sit down and do a little bit. A little bit of something that's going to tweak my brain a little bit. Like, a lot of people, your course on diminished stuff is killer.
Thank you.
And I really point people to that a lot. And I've been kind of writing my own thing on it because, a lot of people just kind of take the real obvious things like, oh, that's obviously a diminished sounding thing. But what you do well, and what I hope to do well, is to kind of weave in some of these things, like the phrasing, like a diminished, like a minor 7 flat 5, and not make it so obvious. And that's the kind of stuff,
music.
I might be on. It's music, exactly. Yeah. I might be on it really diligently, but I don't want you to know that when I'm playing.
Right.
I want it to sound a little bit more, superfluous or whatever.
I think what people forget. Ooh, got a guitar now. What people forget is you have to practice that stuff. When I say practice it, I mean, and I've talked about this in a lot of the instructional lockdowns that I'm doing. You just have to play it over and over and over, and there's nobody who can do that well who has not done that. You know what I mean? It just doesn't happen. So if you want to work on, that rhythmic idea you just did, you have to learn a lick, and you have to figure out where it's going to work. And then you could start looking at it mathematically, like where you're starting and what beat and all these kind of things. Sometimes that's a bit, my brain hasn't always worked that way, so I just feel like, I'm starting on an upbeat. I feel where it starts, as opposed to getting too caught up in where exactly, what I'm saying, what the rhythmic pattern is, where it sits on a grid, a bit more of a feel to it. But listening to people too who do this is a huge part. Absolutely.
And when it comes to, it's funny because it's just like how you learned as a kid. Yeah. Phrasing is built on a phrase. Mm-hmm. I always say it's like, hey Jeff, how's it going today? "Hey Jeff, how's it going today?" You know, the big difference between those two, volume, delivery, rhythm, tempo, you know, all that kind of stuff is super important to consider. And that also, you can take it easy on yourself. You can get a lot more mileage out of maybe the few things that you know. You know, I say this almost probably every lesson or every live stream or anything I do, is I went to a Steve Gadd clinic once, and he says basically, I do 4 things. I almost went, I do 4 things. and he did these stickings, and all of a sudden there's, you know, late in the evening, there's 50 ways to leave your lover. And he goes, so the whole thing was, I do a few things really well, and he gets a lot of mileage out of them. But what's funny is, back to your point about practicing, that's the lick originally. So it's way up there.
Right.
And I was like, all right, let me take it down an octave. Yeah. I just went and tried to put that in A, and I was like, okay, it's teachable in A for a lot of us. I got these tracks, and that started to just literally blossom overnight. Like, I was like, okay, that's just a new phrase that I haven't done before, which is pretty fun.
Yeah, as you're saying, it's language. And so you're just learning new phrases and new words or whatever. The analogy is pretty valid, because it is exactly that. It's a language. You know, and I tell everybody, like, there's a level of craft before you get to artistry. And, you know, when people ask, like, oh, you know, how does he do that? And I'm like, well, he's practiced his ass off. It's the main thing, you know. And then understanding that all these things are small steps. And then to break it down, like you're saying, to break it down to its easiest common denominator, that rhythmic pattern, and then work that through, as opposed to overloading the idea in your head.
Sure.
Now, some people, I don't know if you want to talk about this, and it's funny, you know, I think people hopefully will like to see the background or the backstage between you and I, or something like that, because it's kind of funny. Like, he'll teach a course, I'm like, oh, I'm like, oh, you got that one before I did, you know, because we have this very same influences, and, you know, it's kind of fun. So you did the recent course on playing, like, outside in a blues, and we had that discussion, and you talked about a lot in your course on a minor 7 flat 5 chord, like using the minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio. Some people have asked about that. Can maybe just talk about that for a couple minutes, and then we can.
Yeah, and there's a lot of different resources for that other than the chord. Well, I did a video on my YouTube channel where I just played one chord. And this is how I practiced it for a year before I started writing the course.
Right.
A year, literally. So basically, and I have to give a lot of props to one of my biggest teaching influences, although I've never met him, is Don Mock. And I know that Don worked with Robin for years on his videos, and a lot of times there's Don playing rhythm guitar when Robin's on these REH videos and stuff like that. And so I started checking out his books and stuff and kind of dissecting a lot of things. And he does a really good job. But what I try to do is say, okay, I'm a dum-dum. I want it to be as palatable as possible for me. So what can I do? So, and also Scott Henderson's first video talks about, I've outlined that thing, literally. I've outlined it. I've studied all the parts. And he plays, what's funny, I'll get into this in a second, but he plays for like 15 minutes and explains all these different things you can do. He goes, okay, now let's take it outside a little bit. And I'm like, outside? I was like, it already sounds outside.
You know what I love in that video? When he plays an outside lick, he goes, like, he starts to make a face, like when there's an odd, there's like, you know, that video was changed everything for me as well. The first Scott Henderson REH video. I'm sorry I interrupted. I got all excited.
No, you're fine. So I just took, if you take a minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio, and you play that up a third, you have a dominant chord and you play it up a third. So if you had an A minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio, what's an A minor 7 flat 5? So the root's A. A is the third of F7. Okay? So the people that know this in the crowd will know that if you did that, you're really getting like an F9 sound. You know. But for me, it was really it really clicked when I started putting, and Don Mock helped with this, all these different substitution arpeggios over dominant chords to get different sounds. And that one, I think, to me, is one of the more fun ones, because it's not as out as diminished, right. You know, because you still have a third, you have a fifth, you have a flat seven, and you have the 9. So I like that one. And what I would do is I would take, I'll just loop it here. I think I have my looper set up. Let me do it one more time.
It's live.
I didn't like that chord. Okay. So that's your F7 happening right now. Now, why did I choose F7 and not A7? Because if I wanted to play A7, I would have to play C sharp minor 7 flat 5. And if you're anything like me, you don't play C sharp first as your key of choice when you're just picking up a guitar and noodling. So I figured a lot of us would play in A. So I said, well, let me take an A minor 7 flat 5 and find its dominant, chord partner. So there's that. Let's get. So if you slowly take that. Well, what I like to do is start it from the octave up. But if you hang out there too long, it's going to sound a little weird. So I might like to go. So what I'm trying to do there is basically do the Scott Henderson thing. Go outside, come back inside. Mm-hmm. It's a wink and a nod to it. So over that chord, if I play that again, start out in F blues, pentatonic. Arpeggio. Sorry. So what I did there is just walk the arpeggio back to minor pentatonic 2. So when you get something kind of slick going like that, it sounds, whoa, he went out and he came back in. And then you find them all over the neck. My favorites are these 3 that I'm going to play. Because when you do something like that, you can come right back to F, F minor pentatonic. So that's kind of what the course entails. And what I do is I play an example in the course over F, and I just kind of play a solo that goes through those arpeggios to kind of just hold your hand a little bit. Because everybody goes, play it slower. Okay, I'll play it slower. And it's going to sound terrible. Because it wants to go.
Right.
So that's kind of how I like to use it, and I don't use it that much, but it sounds like it in the course because I'm like laying it out.
Well, like you said, you're showing a thing to practice. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think one thing that you and I do probably more than most people. I see James Hogan on here too. He would be included, but he is an MFer of a guitar player, and making courses is different than making records.
Oh yeah.
It's like and I know you do this too, we talk about it all the time, like, I labor over this shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's every one of those tracks I make, every one of those examples, I think about every bar, every chorus of the 12 bar, how it's going to affect the student so that they can propel themselves to the next level.
Yeah.
And, I could make a bunch of shreddy shit happen, but like,
Well, we just got, I think, I think that was that funny gig, I had done with Robin, and then afterwards we were, selling CDs, and somebody came up to me and was hysterical. I've told the story before. Hey, I got all your TrueFire stuff. I didn't know you could play at your level. And and the point is that we're both making it. It's the courses are designed to help. They're teaching. It's not my record. If you want to hear me really, really play, you pick up my record, because if you're watching, like you said, you just shredding all these things over the top of which I know you can. Who's that helping really? It's not really helping. It's too daunting. You want to. You're teaching.
Yeah. No. Sorry. And it's we are coming from, and it's funny being here in Nashville. You're in New York, which is like the epicenter of improvisational musicians, right? It's jazz.
Yeah.
In Nashville, there's a weird combo of improvisation and play what you know. And in LA, there's probably a lot of that too, because a lot of people have migrated there for the weather. No, I'm kidding. But like killer improvisational people, but also very good part players as well. But what's funny I find here a lot of times is a lot of the kids that are in Nashville playing that are younger than me, they grew up playing parts so much that the improvising thing doesn't make sense to them, because they want to learn a full solo.
Yeah.
And then go back, and I think that's important, because that's what we did, probably also learning, David Gilmour solos or Stevie Ray Vaughan solos or whatever. But there has to be a time when you start to kind of take those examples and make them your own, and it's funny to see guitar players throughout the genres that do this in different ways.
Right.
So I'm fully, you go from Wayne Krantz all the way to somebody who's like super dialed in and going to play the same thing every time.
Yeah, sure.
No better, just completely
different. It's a different skill set, and it's a different approach to music. But one thing I wanted to mention about the arpeggio thing, excuse me, what's going on today, is the playing the notes in the order that you do during your arpeggio, even though they could be diatonic to the key, just makes things sound different. And then
right.
I like that attitude or that aspect about many things. Like in the lockdowns, talked about pentatonic scales. And if you use them in a modal sense, it's still part of the mode. But when you play that combo of notes, it makes everything sound a little different. So when you play that arpeggio, the minor 7 flat 5 arpeggio, even though it may be diatonic to the key, the notes in those order make it sound like it's not, or you're doing something else.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's a great way to say it, because you're starting from the third, essentially, when you do that, which is like the money note, and when you do that, you're already ahead of the game, hip-wise.
Sure.
You're
yeah.
like playing a cooler note than the root. Now, a lot of times in my lessons, I talk to students and I say, play the root, play the root, play the root, because there's nothing that feels better than being at home.
Right.
And you can be at home on the root note, and that's a great place to start. And then once you start to hear the relationship of those notes to the particular chord that's going by, then you start to kind of blossom a little bit more. I did it this past Thursday, where I just did a dominant 7 arpeggio. And what I said was, over that, we play the track. Here, I'll do the track real quick, just because this is fun.
Because you can.
Because I can. We have the tech. So here's from the root. What if I did it from the third? From the fifth? From all these chord tones. It gives you different flavors and different starting points, and then, do a half step into the chord tone. Yeah. Like, to me, that's still arpeggio, even though I'm kind of playing some pentatonic notes in there too. It's because I'm approaching that skeletal structure system from a particular way, a different angle, coming at it from a half step below or whatever. So it's there's always a new way that you can twist it, for sure. We getting blown up here?
Yeah, we're doing great. So you can, all right, so you see, I love that we're both on top of this. So you can look at the questions on your end. I'm happy to, right, you see? I'm happy to feed them to you, or would you like to read some yourself? Because, I want to take a moment just to, while you're looking at some questions, if you want, and I'm going to change I'm operating everything. All right, so once again, thank you. I see some money coming in a tip jar. Of course, I shared this with my guests, and I really appreciate it, and we really appreciate it. What I'd love for you to do, there's a bunch of names that are so familiar, and I think a lot of you guys know both of us equally as well because of our relationship on TrueFire, and we have a lot of crossover. But if you are new to my YouTube channel, please subscribe and ring the bell and all that kind of stuff. And if you are new to Corey or not subscribing to his YouTube channel, when this is all done, please go over to his YouTube channel and subscribe. It's really important. There's this whole algorithm thing, like we want more subscribers. We want to get our word out. But there's a whole, thing that YouTube does. So basically what it means is the more subscribers we have, the better we do, the more we can do these things. It really helps get the word out and then makes it a viable source of income at some point, and things have really changed. So that's the story. And also, if you want to help us out directly, our TrueFire courses, if you purchased my courses or Corey's courses through our websites, we see a higher revenue share. And we love TrueFire. They're the greatest people. Also, Corey has a course out with Brett Papa, and you can get that at Corey's website, and you can also get it at Brett's website. And I have a course coming out with Brett Papa as well, coming up soon. We have to finish it because obviously all this stuff went down, and I haven't had a chance to finish it yet. So we're talking about how that's going to happen. And so there's lots of stuff you can do. Check out Corey's YouTube channel, and also definitely check out Corey's his website, and then there's the Martin giveaway and all that stuff. Okay, so there's the pitch of it. All the stuff to talk about. Okay, so you see some questions you want to field there?
No, I want to say hi to 5 Watt World. I enjoy your channel. Great to see him on here. Let's see. I love that. Guys, just talk amongst yourselves. This is awesome. Sorry, James. I can't sell you the guitar right now. I've got this guitar.
What's the guitar? Let's talk about it. Yeah, I love this.
I've got more requests about this guitar than any other instrument that I own, for sure. And I'm going to start a YouTube series called Guitar Tours, where it's just like my guitars, because I have I wouldn't say I have a lot of weird ones, because I'm not like some quirky collector, but I buy guitars that work for me in the toolbox, and none of them are terribly sacred. This one probably and my Casino are probably the two, and the Junior are like really cool because they're all vintage. So they're really fun. But everything has a shelf life as a guitar player. So this was a 64 Junior. So speaking of Juniors, I'm attached to the chair.
Yeah, the cables.
So I love these guitars for a lot of reasons. This one is it's a 64 Junior, obviously single pickup. Has the great sort of mid 60s chunky Gibson neck. Mm-hmm. Big fan of that. And then this one is actually the same thing, but somebody, not me, routed it out and put 2 humbuckers in it, often called a conversion. Like when people start doing things like that to old Gibsons, they call them conversions. Conversion. It's got the wraparound, so it's weird to see a 2 humbucker guitar with just a single wraparound. But whoever did it did a really good job, and it's been refinished Pelham blue. It doesn't have original tuners. It does have that killer 60s neck. It's actually even chunkier than that one, which is really cool. And so there is this guitar has been owned by like 5 or 6 different people in Nashville. And the story that I don't know the original owner, but the story goes this guitar was hanging on the wall at Groon's, and it was white. And you can see, because Juniors did come in white. They did come in Pelham blue, but this one was white. There's some white like in there somewhere. And it was hanging on the wall, and a great, great guitar player in town named Ryan Warner bought this guitar, son of Steve Warner. He's his own man, great guitar player. But the Nashville guitar playing heritage is rich here. And he bought it, and it had like a DiMarzio Super Distortion in it or something like that. And he said, this is a really cool guitar. I'm going to, spruce it up a little bit. And then he was like, screw it, I'm going to paint it. And everybody was like, you're crazy, that guitar's not going to look cool. And then once he painted it, I think Jeff Sen painted this, like I said, and did a killer job. And now it's a really fun old SG with old wood, and it's nitro. And it's been fun. But I'm interested in changing the pickups out. For one, I don't know what they are. I think they're Lawler Imperials. They sound pretty good, but it's a little thin. I want it to be a little darker and a little fatter sounding. So you and I have had some conversations about pickups, and we'll see what happens. I haven't really been in the mood to change anything on any guitar lately, just because I just want to hang on to my money and play what I got. So it's a really fun guitar, and Jed Hughes owned this guitar, then it went back to Ryan. A couple other people own this guitar, and it's ended up here. And I've gotten lots of like high dollar requests to buy this.
Yeah, we've talked about that, but the funny thing about the guitars like this, and I'm fortunate to have some nice guitars and old guitars, but you're looking for the one that you're gonna play.
Right.
And I don't care if it's a refin or anything like that. If it sounds great and it's, you see like the old wood, it doesn't have to be an old guitar to be great either, but I found a lot of times the old guitars they do have a mojo for sure. And, we're both fortunate to own some old instruments at this point in our career, but it's not an essential. And then, like my main Les Paul, I got the 53, which is a real 53. And then I've got my other one, the newer one, which is just a great, spectacular guitar. So it doesn't have to be old to be great. But the point is, like, also, we were talking about this, people all offer you money for that guitar, and I'm like, well, what would it cost you to replace that guitar? Exactly. More than that guitar you can make, because that guitar it's got a thing to it. Yeah.
Yeah. I went into Guitar Center and I saw a new custom shop SG Pelham Blue, and it was over $5,000. It was like $5,300. And I was like, there's no way I can ask for over that for that guitar. I wouldn't feel right doing it. So, did I have my email open?
It's funny, people are chiming in about throwbacks, and we just.
Yeah. There's another guy in town who's a tech and a rock player. He was talking about. He loves the Alnico 4s. He said if you ask him, he'll make them for you.
I have them they're in all my not vintage guitars. Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. Well, then that's kind of what I want. But this guitar is rock and roll all day. That's guitar and amp. That's all it is. A little bit of delay and some reverb.
Yep, can't beat those P90s for that thing, man. Hey, Keith from 5 Watt World wants to know what kind of bridge you have on that.
I don't know. This is the one that kind of came on it when I got it. And I've looked into, I think there's a Tone Pros on the other one, but I don't know what's on this one. But tuners are original on this, that's for sure. Everything else is original. Cool thing was I did an entire tour with this guitar and only changed it for one song out of like a 12 song
When
set.
they're right. What year is that one? That a 64? Sorry?
Yeah, so, like there's some overdrive on it, and then I'll just kind of turn the volume knob down. And the strings are old. Yeah, so it's a very inspiring little guitar to play. And whenever I have to play like a rock country track or something, this is always side one, and then another guitar will be side two.
Or what's interesting, when you start to get into these, we're getting into this guitar nerd conversation, which is a ton of fun, because this is the stuff we talk about all the time. We talk about when we get on the phone, which is almost like daily, is that we talk about the camera we're using for the live feed, what OBS, like all these settings, all those kind of things, and we just talk about guitars like every other guy would, Right. And what's great about those 64s, that era, like the SG looking Juniors, is they're still sort of the sleeper in terms of affordability, and they're awesome, and it's also like, this is a 64. The 64s are way, like, they're I would say, the least desirable quotation marks of old Fenders.
I played yours. It is incredible.
Right, no, but I'm just saying, like, that's the funny thing. So, what could I get into? Like a 59? It's like, no, that's way beyond my what I could and would do. And so you look for, I know a sleeper quotation marks, but little things like that's not the double cutaway or the single cutaway standard Junior, and so less people go for them. But they sound amazing. So you can find those for really reasonable. You have to be careful with those ones because of the resets, and all that kind of stuff. But if you're sure it's straight, then they're killer guitars. And if it had a reset and it's a good reset and it sounds killer, then you get it for cheap.
It's going to be better.
Who cares? Yeah, even better, right? It's cheaper then. Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it's all about that wood that's dried out. Sure. And I've kind of adopted the thing now where it's like, if I play it and the guitar moves me, then I highly consider purchasing.
Yeah. Yep.
Like this one.
That's a great guitar.
This is a 61 Casino. Mostly original. I feel like the bridge might have been moved or a different bridge was put on. There's like I'm not a vintage guitar aficionado. Because the more I learn, the more I'll want one, and I'll like lust after them, and it's just not healthy.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I have no idea what you mean.
Think, somebody had put a button here and then put it back here, but it's cool because it's got like Koss Music in Syracuse, New York. There's like a sticker on the back of it. I love that little like nostalgic shit. Got the original case. Now this was Tom Bukovac's, and I bought it from a friend. Because I played a friend's, again, 64, 330, and it was awesome. Mm-hmm. And I got to have a 330 because they're really fun to record with because they don't sound like anything else. So, like, when you kind of can play around with the controls. And I like sort of that, like, funky meters,
Mm-hmm.
And it really barks too. These pickups are crazy. Like I'll turn the treble one all the way up.
Yeah.
Fun guitar for sure.
Killer.
I like it.
I played it.
Yeah.
It is. I agree.
It's. I'll tell you though. I think you have to be the only guitar player on stage if you're playing this, because the no center block, it won't compete with another big mid-rangey instrument on stage. I've tried it, and it just doesn't work.
Can you talk about that for a second? Because, it's an excellent point.
Yeah. So this is a completely hollow guitar. There's no center block in it like at least I don't think there is, right?
No, I don't think there is.
Sure, that's the thing about 330s and 335s. And Keith Richards had one just like this with a trem, which I wish this one had the trem. That would be cool. Still very cool nonetheless. But the 335 has a center block in it, so you're going to get less feedback is one thing, but you're going to get a little bit more mid-range punch, probably a lot more actually. Yeah. And it's it's not going to cut through the band quite as well with another guitar player, or if there's a lot of guitar players on stage, So if you're playing, like, if you're Grant Green and you have flat wound and you're playing in a trio, or a quartet with a piano or like, it's going to sound great for that, because there's the air in this goes really, the notes really bubbly, like boom, ba boom, ba boom. You could hear it like when it, like the notes just kind of burp out of it. Whereas a more mid-rangey center block type guitar like this would have a little more direct, tougher sound.
Now, somebody's asking a question about that guitar directly. Is it of a shorter neck scale?
Yeah. It looks like it, but my tech and I measured it, and it was 24 3/4, like on the nose. And it's weird. There's like, I think it was moved back. There's like a weird, you can't really see, but it looks like the bridge was moved back. So maybe somebody did that. Yeah.
When somebody's been asking, what's undesirable about a 64 Strat? Nothing. Here's the difference: is it's got what some people call it's got a veneer board as opposed to the slab board. Collectability, and whatever. It sounds like Hendrix to me. I've played it on the show. Okay. Anyway, cool. Let me see. We got some questions. Got plenty of questions. Well, I have a few questions for you while I look through this.
Fire away. Somebody says, is it noisy with the P90? It's not terribly noisy. I mean, it's going to be noisy if you have a lot of gain, but that's not the kind of guitar that you really gain up. My Jazzmaster is a lot noisier than that. And from what I understand about pickups, like Jazzmaster pickups, the farther the winds are real wound, so it gives it even more of an opportunity to kind of pick up some outside hum. At least that's my thought.
Hey, Corey, any country courses in the works for TrueFire? They really like your modern country soloing.
Thanks. What was funny about that modern country soloing course was I think, speaking of sleepers, I think that's the sleeper, because there's a lot of great stuff in it. Because think about this. A lot of students come to me because they like our teaching of blues and stuff like that. But most of the time I play music, it's playing full music, like song type music, singer-songwriters. You get a small, short segment of a guitar solo. You don't get to play like a long, extended chorus, solo. You have the 8-bar window or a 12 or 16-bar window, which in country is long. So you have to be sort of thoughtful about your melodic content and what your approach is going to be. And that course does it over a variety of styles, whether it's like chicken picking or it's, really triad, arpeggio type stuff. That course, if you're thoughtful about it, you can pick a lot of really good nuggets from it. I also do a lot of hybrid picking in it. And that course recently I've seen a big bump in sales on that one, whereas for the longest time, it was kind of just, humming along there, not doing too well. But I think people got...
They all do well.
No, sometimes courses...
No, I know. It's funny. People ask that, Yeah. And you never know. The funny thing is we never know what's going to hit. Right? Or ones you're like, this is going to do great. And then it comes out, you're like, oh, wow, really? And then you have one, like my blues arpeggio course. I think it's an important topic, but it's kind of dry. And sometimes you think like the sexy ones are going to sell more. And it's interesting. Okay, so how was S.C. Nesbitt? How was teaching? I don't know what's going on today. Sorry. How is teaching? It's allergies going on in New York City is what it is. Everything, and actually, it snowed in in New Jersey tonight. I know it's like 39 degrees this morning. It's crazy. All right, so how has teaching helped you improved your playing?
I mean, how has
exactly?
When quick little history lesson, I moved to Nashville in.
That's a lesson.
That's a lesson there. Life lesson. I moved to Nashville in 2000, and I moved back a year to Pittsburgh. A year or so later, I had like the bottom drop out of my life. Like I lost my gig, I lost my job, I lost my girlfriend, like all that kind of stuff, know. And I said, you know what, I'm going to go back to Pittsburgh and I'm going to teach. And I got in this swing band, and we were playing all over the country. It was great. So I was really busy playing music and guitar. And that I was nervous because I'm not a schooled player, as you could probably tell. I had to like kind of just dive in and learn from a bunch of other people and a bunch of materials, whether it be books, videos, CDs, whatever. I have a bunch of cassette tapes from I think they were called Pro Licks.
Okay.
Star Licks was the video, and then Hot Licks was the video. But these are called Pro Licks. There's these cassette tapes, and like Steve Travato's made some, and it's just like, here's static line vamp one, right. And then rewind the tape and all that stuff, and so I would just buy all of that shit. And then like in the country stuff, I got really into Brent Mason and whatever, just shedding all that stuff. So I knew somebody was going to ask me, why is a C chord a C chord? Why does the pentatonic scale work? What is a dominant 7 chord? And I didn't know. So I had to teach myself theory in a huge way. And I had to take lessons from a lot of people to learn that stuff too. So from the ground level, it's made me a better player. And when I make a TrueFire course now, the R&D that goes into those, or in any kind of course, whether it's with Brett or my own, the R&D that goes into them is pretty significant because I don't want to not know something. It takes a long time to become an expert on something. I mean, Keith is with us on the chat, and I can't imagine the research he does or Scott for his pedal videos. Like Josh Scott goes to Europe and tries to find the families of people that were making the tone bender, and it's like, that's the kind of research you got to do if you want a really quality product out there. For a 10 or 12 minute video, maybe 15 minutes, or a course that has 10 examples. Mm-hmm. So it's it's important. It's important to really do the research, and it makes you better.
Yeah.
So that's what I'll never stop. I still order books on Amazon.
Oh, look, I'm the same way. Like, I love teaching because it makes me, there's even just some basic things that you just rediscover in a way. You're like, you're teaching, you're like, oh, or just an easier way to teach it makes me play it better. You just come across something, and I think it's been great for my playing. And it's also made me just weed out a lot of crap in my playing. Because if you hear somebody play something back and you're like, oh, that's something I might have played, or you know what I mean? You're like, oh, that's terrible. Like, in a sense of not terrible playing, but it made me just want to be much more economical in my playing, in a sense that, and just teaching has done that. It made me, I think, trying to come up with what to teach even in TrueFire courses made me a much better guitar player. Certainly a much better teacher, because you feel like you're much more organized. Like when you're talking about stuff, it's clear you do this a lot, and you had to do this, and you take it seriously. And it's a funny thing. Not that don't mean this any way. A lot of guys are, since the world has changed and everybody is trying to get online and doing teaching, and we've had this discussion where it's like it ain't that easy, And I don't mean that everybody's got to make a living. I don't mean that in that sense that they shouldn't. But teaching is a thing. You and I both take it very seriously. So I know Jason Laughlin does, and James Hogan, my friends who are great players, but really great teachers who take it very seriously. And we do, because it's important, because you can, I love when students come to you and they're just doing something completely crazy wrong, and you're like, who told you that? It's like, well, my first teacher told me to pick this way. You're like, really? That's crazy, It's interesting.
Yeah. That's kind of what I started to do too on the TrueFire channel, is to put on videos that are just like, okay, your vibrato needs a lot of work. I can talk to you here. Let's go to my video, and you're going to get much more out of it. You're going to be able to rewind it for days, and do that kind. So it's like, I realized, wow, there's some real nuts and bolts things that are missing in a lot of people's playing, because I think of the YouTube generation, that, not as in particular age of people, but the dawn of YouTube. There's just too much information out there. Then I think what happens for us, which is nice for our business, is people say, man, I bought these courses, I go on YouTube, I have an instructor in my hometown, and I still can't figure this shit out. Can you help me? And I think for guys like you and we've been through that as well, because we're foraging for information and trying to, I figure if it makes sense to me on a certain level, I can make it make sense to somebody who's just starting out or having trouble, or hitting a hurdle or something like that.
But I think it's also the desire to actually help somebody do that. And
exactly. And Sorry.
And, well, often people ask me, about teaching, and I know we've talked about this. When you got into playing guitar, I didn't set out to be largely an online guitar teacher. I do gigs and things, but life goes a certain way, and that's fine. But I look at myself as largely being in the happiness business, where, if I can provide happiness in people's lives, like we get to work and playing guitar together. I'm happy because I get to talk about playing guitar, and people who want to learn how to play guitar, and they've sought you and I out. So it's different than when you had little Johnny come in the music store when you first, and that's hard stuff, man. It's not digging a ditch difficult, but that's soul sucking. But when you get online with a guy who wants to work with you or me because they like what we do, it's the greatest thing. It's really awesome, and it's a ton of fun to share that experience with other people.
You and I have created friendships with people this way, and business contacts, and people who just are generally looking to support us because we touched them for a moment with our not just our ability to teach, but our ability to listen
and communicate.
Yeah, and that's an important thing. Like, I have to really know what that person's after to get on the correct path with them.
Yeah.
I'm not real good with the people that want a turnkey answer. Nope. If you want to do the time, I'm ready to do it with you. Which is why I put so much effort into the courses like you do too, because I'm pouring my heart into those. And I'll never forget when I lived in Pittsburgh and I was really into the country thing, and some guy came over and was like, "Man, I want you to show me some of these country licks." And I was like, "Well, do you know how to play through changes?" And he was like, "Oh, I knew you were going to ask me
or
that."
What are changes?
Yeah, and I was like, that's where the licks are coming from. I'm not pulling I don't really play a lot of country licks. I play country technique on licks sometimes, but it's blues and jazz improvising with a country approach. You know what I mean? So and there's canned lick, like little canned licks that I stole from Brent Mason or whoever, but that goes by in an instant. What am I going to do for the rest of the solo?
Yeah.
But in any case, he never took a lesson again because there it was.
I don't want to do the work. Hey, Brett finally popped in. Did you just wake up there, Brett? Huh? What's going on, man?
No, we're aware of his life with his kids. He's been up.
I know he's been. I'm just giving him a hard time. Yes.
And I love those damn kids. They're
awesome.
He just dropped the bass off that you borrowed when you had to play a bass line on your course.
Oh yeah.
He just dropped the bass off to me, so that was nice.
Good. That's awesome.
Now I can get my bass back.
No, they're great. Brett's kid. Well, just so you know, we're talking about Brett Papa on here, a good friend of both ours. Courses with Brett, great dude. And when we film at his place, his family is he's got that little door you can see over there where it's the clear glass on the other side. A lot of times, his son is right up against the window looking in at us, and great kids. So it's a total pleasure hanging out with he and his family and his wife.
And the way that our relationship and friendship has grown has been really, really cool, because I didn't think I had as much in common with him until I met him and we hung out a lot. And he's really into mental and physical wellness and all that kind of stuff. And what's funny is you talked about the happiness business, same kind of thing. Like once I thought about when I was teaching kids, and I was like, I'm going to treat guitar lessons like Little League Baseball, because everybody wants to do it, but not everybody's going to the major leagues, and not everybody's going to be a professional guitar player, but I have to make them have fun for the 30 minutes that they're here. Right. Same thing goes into our courses. We have to be fun,
entertaining, we have
to enjoy what we're doing. And if we're not, we shouldn't be on this side of the camera.
And you and I have joked about this too, not to interrupt you, but we have these blues courses, and if you're like, oh yeah, I did that in my course. Oh, I did that in my course. And because there's only so many times you could talk about the blues in many ways, but it takes a while before it sinks in. So people said to me, what do you think about this course versus that course? I'm like, well, very often they're different views of the same thing. And I tell them, pick up Corey's courses too, because the way he teaches it, you just might be ready to hear it, you know what I mean, like a different way, or the way he mentioned it. This student said this to me yesterday. It's like he was watching, I forget what video it was, and it clicked, like somebody's video on TrueFire is and all the stuff we were talking about suddenly clicked. I'm like, yeah, it's because you were ready to hear it at that point in time.
Exactly.
And whether you got it from me directly or you got it from, You know, if I explained it and you're like, oh, and then you watch one of your courses and goes, yeah, I finally clicked when I was watching Corey's course. Great, because it's a cumulative effect. And so I say to everybody, like, watch everybody's courses. So, and they're very largely personality driven. There's guys who like the way I teach. There's guys like, you know, blah 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 teach, and whoever they, you know, that. So it's really it's interesting. But we're really fortunate to have been at TrueFire since the very kind of beginning, or very early on. I mean, I was the third artist at TrueFire, and it was. And then you've been there for a long time, and then working with Brett, it's been really cool, and I feel really fortunate to kind of be where we're at.
Well, the cool thing is when you say about the variety and styles of courses, is like as many courses as you or I have done. The thing that I thought was really cool about the course I did with Brett is I was able to fill in a lot of gaps.
It's like a different format,
and I'm going to continue to do that. You know, it's a completely different. It's, you know, there's the Netflix docuseries, or there's the hour-and-a-half documentary. You know what I mean? You can watch that 30-minute episode and then say, oh, that was really cool. I can't wait to watch the next one. Or you can say, wow, I'm going to have a drink and I'm going to sit down and digest this thing. Either way. So it's two different formats for whoever needs to digest it at that particular time. But you're right. And somebody said the greatest, they liked the baseball analogy, and they said his biggest success was getting a kid to catch a fly ball who couldn't. And I mean, I can relate to that. You know what I mean? And the same thing happens on our instruments and with our course as well.
I get students who say, like, oh, I must be your worst student. I'm like, no. Like, do you get that too? Like, oh, I got this one guy in Australia, two guys in Australia, actually, which I got a lot of guys in Australia, which is a very bizarre thing. But one guy, he's the funniest guy. He's like, oh, I must be your worst student. And I won't do the bad Australian accent impersonation. He's like, I only got a chance to work on the 4 positions of the dominant 7th arpeggios. And he just rips through them at like, and I'm laughing like, wait a minute, wait. Did you just say you're probably my worst student as you went through actually the 1, 4, 5 in position in 4 different positions? And he did that like right in front of me. He's like, I'm kind of messing up in this one. Don't have this one down yet. And I'm like, what? Like, you know? And then I have the guy who's like, man, I'm so into this, but I've been slammed at work. So can we just run over this stuff? And I'm like, yeah, man, it's fine. It's like, you know, you're a good dude, and this is part of it, and it's the relationship, and it's the ongoing thing, and it's the support that you give someone. Because, you know, when you do something, especially, I like you probably only really teach adults at this point. When somebody's putting it out there to either get better at something they've been doing for a long time, or they want to pick up something new, it's a lot of courage. I admire the courage that it takes to say to yourself at, you know, 30, 40, 50, or 60, saying, I want to get better at this thing. And so you have to have a lot of respect for that, you know, and I do. So whatever level they're at, it's cool as long as they're enjoying it, we're working together, and they're improving. It's it.
You forget how much time you actually put into something when you were young.
Oh, man.
And you had the time. Yeah. And, you know, I'll get a wild hair and pick up my acoustic and try to play some stuff in Tommy Emmanuel's courses or something. And there was a time when I was doing that for like a month straight, and I was like, oh, I'm getting this. I stopped it for a month. It's like starting.
Yeah, it went all the way.
You know, like exactly. So it's like you take not only guitar playing but something new and physical. That is a whole other set of things. I mean, you know, my girlfriend has a great saying that she says her dad always said was, there is no free lunch.
Right.
And I live by that. There isn't. So in the time that I get like, oh man, I wish I would have had this many people watch my live stream, or I wish I would have had this many people buy this course. Like, cause you're always setting these numbers for success. And it's just like, you got to keep working. Yeah. You know, try the next one. Cause you might hit more people, you know, you might reach more people and influence them or whatever. You know, it's funny, these, stages of success we put on ourselves, whether it be in our guitar playing or guitar course creating or whatever. It's just like, look at that little increase you made already. You know, that's so important. You shouldn't just throw that out with the bathwater.
Yeah, absolutely. And but you know, it's fun. I'm very thankful, and what I love, what's really great too, and it is that people who work with me, and they, you know, there's a guy, one of my students online, is like, Corey, the man. And I was making a joke and said, who, me or him? And he said, well, every time we had a lesson, you would refer to Corey as the man. I'm like, yeah, of course. Yeah. Like, you know, if you want, because I'm like, yeah, he's the man. When it comes to these courses, you want to check out another guy who's teaching and playing I highly respect. and a good dude and thinks similarly. And I see Jason Laughlin's online, same as him. Like when we have these conversations, and like I said, James Hogan, these are TrueFire friends and great guitar players. And that's the thing. Guys who can teach and can play. Like that's the thing. I love that. And not everybody can. I don't mean that in a dismissive way. If you spend your whole life touring, you've not been taking the routes we've taken in terms of enjoying teaching. And then you and I have had this conversation, maybe something you might want to talk about, like what it was. I'm like a year older than you, and I had done my touring. Sorry, what? I'm about like 10 years older than Corey. And a lot of people just know me as a teacher, but I did a lot of touring in the 90s and early thousands in my own funk heavy metal band, which was the thing at the time, and we did really well. And I had a steady gig at the 55 Bar in New York, and I was doing all that stuff. And then I would do intermittent tours. And then the problem was I would come home, and then you got nothing.
Yeah. And
I realized that, well, this is really, and living in New York City, like you had this chunk of money that would last you, however, living super frugally in a shoebox apartment. Luckily enough to have had a rent stabilized apartment in New York City that I got through a very long thing, which allowed me to do that and get a foothold in New York. But you'd come home and you'd have no money, or in very short period of time, no money. And then it's not your band. If it's not your band, and there's that, then if it is your band, like I had this discussion with Matt Schofield many times, like then it's your band. You're doing everything. You're responsible for. He books his own tours. He drives the van and all this kind of stuff. So after a while, I was like, the teaching thing, I really enjoy it, and it's a much more stable existence, and I really enjoy it, And the way technology has changed, I always feel like I was one of the earliest people to start teaching online when Skype started going. Can't imagine how bad it looked back then, but some people bought into it and started doing it because it was just easier, So it's been great. I don't know where I'm going with this conversation. Just kind of the back history of. I know. So recently, you were doing a lot of side guy gigs, and apart from the what's going on now, you had made a conscious decision to sort of morph into more online presence and being a teacher, and certainly you do a lot of great stuff with Martin and UA. But I feel like you've made a conscious shift to be more your own person.
Yeah, it's funny because I had a lot of itches that I needed to have scratched, sure. As a player, and they still exist, but they don't like they did any.
The reality.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of deep kind of conversations you could take in this, but once I became friends with Tim Pierce, he had some incredible insight. Yeah. And my biggest goal was I wanted to be a session player. And that was huge for me. Are we still alive?
Yeah.
My feet stopped.
That's all right. I know we're still good.
So, but he had a lot of influence on me. It's funny. I got into a van with him. We were doing this thing at Sweetwater like 2-3 years ago, and I said, "Tim, I want to introduce myself." He goes, "I know who you are." And I was like, "What?" Because he had checked out some of my teaching stuff, and the teaching stuff for me was always like a side thing because it wasn't like the dream of what you said when like you said, you don't seek this out playing guitar. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, well, wait a second. You started to see the ceiling of other things. And I'll tell you this, and Tim was huge with this for me because he said, look, you're only ever going to be playing for someone else. You're probably only ever going to be reporting to someone else's manager. He goes, he did that for 30 years in the session world. All of his creativity, every cool part that he ever came up with goes on somebody else's music. And that's cool. And I honor the people that do that. And I still love to do that. But it happened to me, 6 months ago or so. I was in a session and I had to play this guitar part that was kind of like, and I'll just make it up. Like it was one of these sort of, and it's cool. I love all guitar parts, but it was one of these things like really long delay and reverb. Like weird little parts like that. And I was like, I want to be home working on lessons. I want to be creating content for my students.
Right.
And that's when it flipped. And I was like, this isn't where I want to be right now, because nobody's ever going to hear this. Nobody's ever going to know it's my years of music listening to put into this creative thing. Yeah. And honestly, like I didn't have, I don't do it every day like Tom Bukovac or Derek Wells or, those guys who are so good at it. And they get to do it every day, where I would do it 2-3 times a month at best. And I was like, I'm never going to achieve that status, but I'm racing over here on the online guitar lesson content. Why don't I try to stay in the lane that I'm really good and successful at? And I can dictate everything else about it. And that's the thing, because there's probably a lot of people watching that are business owners. It's the same thing. Absolutely. I schedule a call with my marketing guy once a week. I do, all this stuff, like we try to keep, he's like, have you done this? I'm like, no. He's like, okay, that's your task for this week. And it's like, wow, this is amazing. And the cool thing about when I did the course with Brett, and I'm working on 1.5 courses for Brett in the meantime, is we've talked about launch dates. We talked about the title, the content, like every little thing, the pricing, when we would have sales. And I was like, wow, this is my business, and he and I own 50% of it. And it's so cool, and
well, you're taking power, you're giving yourself power. You're taking it away from the situation. You're not relying on other people. And that was the thing I came to.
And the overarching thing was that I get to be in a little bit more control of my own destiny. Exactly. And it was great. Once I was standing on a stage in about 95-degree weather in North Dakota, and we were supposed to do an hour sound check, 40-minute sound check that lasted like an hour and a half, because the local sound company sucked and couldn't get it together. And I was like, I'm good. I'm good. Like, here we are.
Angus Clark was on here, and he said one of my favorite things was, because Angus is done every kind of huge arena tours, and he said, the same problems you have on a gig at the local bar, you have on a huge stage. And
you would never let it happen, but it does.
It's the same. I thought that was hysterical. It's totally true. You're like, oh yeah, the cable's broken. What's, you know what I mean? Or I'm getting feedback like from somewhere. So yeah, I had the same kind of moments where I was doing gigs, and I'm thinking, there was one moment I remember years ago on a gig, I was playing like the bitter end or something, and I just stood there, and I was being professional, but in my mind I was like, God, this just sucks. Like, I'm turd polishing this song right now. When I could be home watching TV. You know what I mean? Like, I almost felt that way. Like, there's no creative thing going on. I try to find, good in everything, and maybe it wasn't the right gig for me to have taken, but so it was a nice kind of feeling that, I'd rather go home and teach some person and then not have to have lugged my amp around, and it's not 2 o'clock in the morning, and I didn't eventually end up making, whatever it was, an hour turn out. And, gigs in New York, I don't want to sound like a whinge festival, like gigs in New York, none now, but they pay the same as they did when I started. Yeah. So it's, right. So it's crazy. Sorry, Brett wanted me to show this online. Brett was,
oh, cool. So, yeah. I can talk.
Just play it. So we have some questions. I'm sorry. Was that okay?
Sure. No, one thing else is on top of that is, this isn't an ungrateful situation either. Nope. This is a revelation kind of a thing, and it happens for all of us. And I think you said you're a Woody Allen fan.
Yeah, unfortunately, yes. At this,
But like the artistic level.
On the artistic level, yeah. It was one of those things where afterwards you're like, oh, when the whole stuff started going down. Never meet your heroes.
Yeah, right. Another thing about I always hated that those who can't teach,
Yeah.
And I always hated that because it's not true. But then Woody Allen said, those who can't teach Jim.
The best. Those who can't teach.
And I was like, oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anyway, question
okay, it was directed towards me, but same thing as you. What do you do when you get into a rut in your playing? So we can both answer that one. You first.
I go to something completely different that is not what I would normally play, or something that's hard, something that's physically challenging, something that's mentally challenging. Excuse me. So I've been doing that a lot, just with a lot of more of the complex. Everybody wants to talk about the outside line playing thing. It's like I want to learn that enough that I can teach it, not necessarily so I can play it and make everybody miserable with my, outside line playing.
Right.
So it's like you take that, but if I sit in the physical realm, like the Tommy Emmanuel stuff, it's really difficult for me physically. I don't do that stuff very well.
Yeah.
It's just putting yourself in an uncomfortable situation.
Yeah, and some people have said, and I don't agree with this, work on your weaknesses. I'm like, nope, work on your strengths, in my mind. Like, weaknesses, like if you don't know, if you can't play the song, that's not a weak, but like my chicken picking may, not be as where I want it to be. You know what I mean? But am I going to work on that? Like, unless I specifically am dying to do that in a country sort of sense, I don't think. I think as an artist, I like to work on my strengths. I like to spread myself around and work on things that interest me. But I'm not going to practice something because I think I should. If that makes sense to you. Like, I think I should get better at playing over giant steps. Well, yeah, I think I should. I think I should too. Yeah, I really do think I should work on that. But I'm not going to. Or if I'm doing it, I'm like, it doesn't really have a lot of impact on what I'm doing, and it would be sort of like a really just a strictly educational exercise. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I know it's not really where I'm going to be. Well, why don't I work on something that enhances something that I've already kind of stylistically what I want to work on, or and so the same thing is too. I'll just find something. Transcribing always gets me out of a rut. If I'm hearing, like, I want something new, I'll just put on any of our favorite guitar players. And so, like, the other day I was working on, because I don't know about you. Well, there's a difference. I haven't gotten a lot of practicing in because I've been working on this stuff we're doing right now, getting this channel right, getting the broadcast correct, and having help with great friends, Romano and Phil, getting this stuff together, and like you, getting merchandise ready, and then teaching a lot. So my actual was like, wow, we really haven't put aside the time to practice. So, and like, I know it. You can skate for a little bit of time, and then after a while, you're like, I can't skate anymore. My chops are out the window. So I started working on a Paganini, one of the Caprices, number 16, because I'm like, okay, there it is right there, because I love that stuff anyway, and there's a great way for me to work on my chops, and it's something musical. And so I'm just working through those pieces with maybe not an end goal to be able to perform it at concert level, but a way to, okay, I know I'm going to get my little bit of reading together. I like the harmony, and I'm just working on technique. So I'll find something like that, or I'll just, like an endless well of inspiration for me and you is like, I'll just listen to an old Robin Ford record or a new Robin Ford record and go, oh, I'm just going to, what did he do there? That guy who comes up with cool stuff all the time. You know what I mean? And just kind of dig into that. Or Michael Schenker for me. I like, check him out. Like, I just love the feel. And how can I get that smoother, Old Clapton. So we've got some more questions. I know you were looking. Do you see some questions you want?
To add to that, like, I pulled out, I'm more of a key center approach guy as opposed to a modal player, so I'll just play to the chord. And I pulled out the Pat Martino book, Linear Expressions, right? And I think I made it through. Ended up making it through a lot of it as a kid. But I pulled out the first line over G minor. That kind of. I just played it while I was talking. Something like that. And that was like, took me a couple days just to reread that because I'm a shitty reader. But once I started rolling with it, I was like, oh, that's where I got some of my chromatic ideas, because that really started to say, oh, maybe that's where you got some of that stuff. Because people will ask me, like, oh, how did you play that line like that? And I'm like, oh, that's because I learned it from Pat Martino. And I really didn't really listen to a lot of Pat Martino, but I studied some stuff. And that, but my point was, I went back, I had to fucking read again, and I was like, okay, here we go. So that was a good rough buster.
Yeah. I mean,
sure.
So I just got a text. I didn't realize I didn't put all the links in the description because I'm a one-man show. I have done it. All the links, they should be in their description along with the tip jar. So if you've been hanging out, my apologies. These are funny things. We're just trying to do everything here. So I sometimes forget to do something. So now in the description, there should be. Take a look. Please let me know if it's there. I can't check online. I think maybe I don't want to drop a feed. So so take a look. So the tip jar that's there, and then a link to everything that we've been talking about is all there.
Great.
So yeah, then the rough busters too. I'll just dig up old lessons. Like I said, I stuff I learned from taking lessons with Mike Stern years ago or something like that. I'm like, I still have all that stuff. I'm like, oh yeah, what were we talking about? And then the cassettes, which I have to digitize, but at some point. Did you send some questions? I'm looking through here now.
Oh, I thought you had some.
Okay. What would be two things, two top guitar things to practice when you don't have your guitar with you, if that makes sense? Spelling your chords. Memorizing your chords. You know, C major 7, C, E, G, B, C dominant 7, C, G, B flat, C, G flat, G flat. You know, C minor. I wrote those down in college like a lunatic. Every key, every chord. Okay, every key and every chord, and you can do that in paper, and then memorize the formulas: root 3 5 7, root 3 5 flat 7's dominant 7, root flat 3 5 flat 7. You know, you go through that, then you have that, and also you can have a fretboard piece of paper. But I probably have it on the phone now. Who knows? You know, I'm thinking back from when I was, when I was doing this, and just go through each string. And mentally, here's some fun exercise I would always do in the subway, and you can envision each fret, right? But one thing that was kind of cool, I'm sure I invented this. Oh wait, I'm in open tuning. Okay, I was working on that killer Faces tune called "What You Need," and I kind of went into this open tuning, which I won't play because I'll probably demonetize the video if they hear it, which is so annoying. I did a video with Angus Clark, and he did like a version of some Deep Purple stuff, and boom! That quickly. Like within 2 minutes, I got a demonetization for that. So whatever. What was I saying? So think about what are the notes are in the fingerboard. So I'm going to think, all right, E, A, D, G, B, E. Now you imagine, okay, what's the first fret? What are the notes in the first fret? F, B flat, E flat, A flat, C, and F. And then, okay, how about sharps or flats? You can call it the other way, enharmonic spellings. Then the second fret would be F sharp, B, E, A, C sharp, F sharp. And that's a good way to do it. And then you can start to envision that. And that's just these little mind games like that. But spelling chords, if you don't know your seventh chord, your triads, memorize how to spell your triads first. Because like C major 7 is C, E, G, B. Every kind of C chord, no matter what, whether it's C sharp minor 7 flat 5, is still some sort of C, E, G, and B. So if you get that together, you just get the foundational stuff going. Okay, sorry, your turn.
I said this to a student yesterday. I said, okay, this is going to be a very radical concept. I said, you're never going to hear this, or you haven't heard this before. I said, there are only 3 types of chords that exist. And he was like, what? I was like, major, minor, and dominant.
Yeah.
Happy, sad, bluesy. Everything else you kind of build off of with that. And why do I say that? Because it takes the pressure off of having to know all of these like extensions on these chords and all these altered chords, where it's, if you know that it's a major, a minor chord, or a dominant chord first, then you can start adding the notes to it. It's much easier to add one note to a chord that you already know than building from the ground up, in my opinion.
Right.
So, but somebody asked, do I rotate guitars or do I stay with the same few? Well, that's a good question, because as I said earlier, like my dream was to always be a session player. And, I know what each one of these guitars does. And there's some other ones over here that you can't see. There's like a parts Strat, a parts Tele, a Jazzmaster, a baritone, a Mando guitar, a bunch of acoustics, and they all do certain things. There's a Ganjo over there. And a
Ganjo?
Yeah, so it's a 6-string banjo.
Okay.
You do.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. and I used it the other day on a session, and I plugged it into my UA Apollo, and I put a guitar amp on it, and I put the reverb, and I went, and it made this really cool like pizzicato type sound. I was like, that earned its money that day. But I'm going to tell you something very controversial, not controversial, but eye-opening. You and I, Jeff, we've been playing guitar for a long time. And you've been sticking with those 2 guitars we see in the shot. I still don't have a freaking clue about what guitar I want to play the most. I play this one a lot because the fret job is really good and it plays well, but it's not my end-all, be-all. The Casino isn't the end-all, be-all. I went for a while going just strictly playing a lot of Gibson scale type stuff. Then I got into the PRSs, and I still play those a lot. I like the Grissom model I have. a lot. That's probably my favorite. And I've been playing that Silver Sky Strat a lot and loving 25.5 again.
Right.
For whatever reason. Now I'm like, well, I'm staying at home, not playing live. Maybe I'll go to lighter strings again.
Sure.
Maybe I'll go back to 9s. Whereas when you're playing live, the light strings can kind of like
I can't do it.
Yeah, you just dig in a little too hard, and then they I don't break them a whole lot, but it's just like it just doesn't feel right.
No, it's too light. And then on the road, sometimes I use 10s. Oddly enough, on Gibsons and Fenders, I just don't. But I went to 10.5. Said I don't, I don't have, you and I are not big dudes, so I don't have those kind of hands, and I've had some hand problems throughout my life, so I have to be careful as to what string gauge I end up using. So 10s and live is very different than playing it at home. So okay, talk about real fast. Can you mention the Martin giveaway again? People were just asking. Yeah. So then we'll talk more about guitars.
The Martin, I'm giving away it's called a OOC Junior 10E. It's a 3/4 size O with a cutaway, full all solid wood. I think we have a link for it, and you can just put your email in and enter to win that.
Okay, cool. Thanks. And the link is now in the description. My fault. Sorry. Okay, so let's talk about, you have recently just started working with PRS. Well, relatively recently. So.
Yeah, it was a good story. I have all these great connections with 2Rock and Universal Audio, Martin Guitar. I've been working with Martin Guitar for 6 years as a clinician. And I literally was like, man, I need like a good electric guitar brand that I can work with, that, I take these guitars on the road. And they've been really, really good to me as far as providing me with some instruments. And literally like a week later, a friend of mine who's a PRS artist, he said, man, I just submitted your info to PRS. You'd be a great ambassador for them. I love what you do for the guitar community. And then I was like, wow. So I ended up calling my guy at PRS, and we talked. And he goes, well, I see you've been playing a lot of P90s. And I said, yeah. And he said, well, I got this gold top 594 McCarty. And he goes, it's in my office. I'll send it to you. And so it's that one. And I remember, Jeff, I was with you in New York. Remember, I was playing in New York and went to a Guitar Center. And he goes, is that the one they're sending to you? And I was like, holy shit, I think so. And it was like a lot of money.
Yeah.
I was like, damn, that's cool. And it's a really cool guitar. That 594 series is awesome. They sent me this S2, which is a cool workhorse guitar. I used that. I said I wanted it for the NAMM show 2 years ago, and I've been using that for a while. I took that on the road for a while because it had a coil split. It worked really well. And then I said that I wanted to order a DGT. I got a custom color, a couple other custom things. You recommended that I get the dots instead of the birds, which was really cool, and I did that. So we talked about that. And then so here's a cool thing. So I talked to David Grissom the other day, who you've been friends with for years, and we had a really great time at NAMM. We had
dinner together.
At dinner. It was awesome.
Brett,
we had a great
Brett
time.
Papa,
And he goes, hey, I got to tell you, I watched your 2Rock video. I thought it sounded great, and your playing was great. And I was like, wow, that was really cool of him to say. And I played his guitar in a lot of the video. So I was like, okay, that doesn't really happen every day.
No.
So then this year at NAMM, I said, hey, I wanted to play one of these Silver Skies at the NAMM booth, or at the UA booth, because I wanted some different selections and stuff like that. And I didn't know they were putting a maple neck version of this out. And they had one, and they said, come down and get it and take it to your hotel room, but you can't tell anybody till 9 o'clock the next day, because they were announcing it officially. So I didn't do any spoilers for them. But I actually kind of really dig this guitar. It's got the 7.5 inch piece. I never had a maple neck Strat.
Right.
It's fun.
Is that Ash or Alder?
I don't know. I think it's Alder. But it's kind of got the more 50s sound to me. Pretty thin, but in a good way.
Oh, yeah.
I dig it. Yeah, man. It's fun. I never had a white guitar.
Cool.
So I got to raise the trem. I want the trem to float. Mm-hmm. I'm not a stop trem. I think, like, what's the point?
No, I know.
I
yeah. You
got you should be able to use it. And I'd put a Bigsby on a ukulele if I could.
Yeah, really. Hey,
I love trems.
Amps. Okay, let's talk about our two rock buddies.
All right. Cool. All right. Let me go back to a different guitar.
I think I've told my story, but you can tell yours. We talked about Eli was on last week when we were talking to Joey Landreth, who is another
cool.
two rock guy, but they're great.
Yeah. You introduced me to them a couple years ago, and we had one also. I kind of had a connection. It was like a two-pronged attack because
that was
at
UA, just me.
But we had a TS1 in the aux booth, and James Santiago was a big fan, and I was like, wow, this was a pretty intimidating amplifier. So I said, I'd love to try your traditional clean out, and here's a great story. So they sent me the traditional clean to try. I took it on sessions. I loved it. Traditional clean, basic kind of black facey Fender sound, of course, with the two rock, mojo in it, like only they can do. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And it was great because I was playing my jazz master with this artist, Lucy Silvis. And it was very like throwback 50s, big wet reverb, flat wound strings. And the amp just sounded awesome. And I remember playing it on a gig too, where her husband, John Osborne, was playing. He's one half of Brothers Osborne, tremendous guitar player. And he was like, what the fuck amp are you playing? It sounds awesome. And he now has some two rocks. So it's like the love has been spread. But in any case, so they sent me this black suede traditional clean. And we're playing on the rooftop of the BMI building in Nashville. Mm-hmm. And they got it covered, and it rains. And I was like, okay, it's cool. It's gonna be fine if it rains. Massive storm, like huge rainfall. The suede gets wet and literally slides off of the amplifier. I mean, I'm telling you, I was mortified because I felt like I destroyed this beautiful amp. And the thing is, I turned it on and it worked. It was great, and we played the show. But it was completely, like, all the glue had gotten loose on the Tolex.
Wow.
Of the suede. It fell off. And now whenever they send me one, they send me like, they send me something, they sent me a baffle to my cabinet, and they're like, waterproof repair specialists, all this, like they mess with me pretty good. But I ordered the Bloomfield Drive, which I'm playing right now. And I have that kind of dirtied up, like there's nothing, I have pedals plugged in, but I'm not turning anything on. And I have that going through the UA aux. I have a little bit of bleed coming through the cabinet right now too. So the aux box is going to my Apollo, then to you. So I love the way these amps feel great. They kind of just respond to what you're doing really well. It doesn't always translate to in-ear monitors or across in a video. It's more of this amp in particular, you have to be in the same room with it to play it for sure. I remember I played a 40-watt one at UA for a video we did, and it was mind-blowing. It was really cool. But then I just got this really cool reverb unit. This is made by Ebo, Eric Borash in Nashville.
Right.
He makes this tube reverb that Tom Bukovac was using. He uses a lot, and it's also got like a preamp in it too. So there's a full-on, it's a full-blown circuit, and you can kind of get this really lovely tube reverb. So it's a lot of fun, and you can kind of drive the front of the amp with it because it's got a gain control.
And I convinced myself I don't need any more gear. Well, actually, Joey Landreth did a thing I forget who made the reverb with a harmonic tremolo that he was running into the front of the amp. I'm like, all right, I gotta get that.
Yeah, that's a cool.
That's a great sound.
Sure.
Yeah.
just, I like Ebo a lot. He's a good dude, and I wanted to support him. And I ordered that thing months ago. And there's nothing like a really expensive piece of gear coming during a pandemic. So,
oh yeah, but, and you're like, that thing I ordered, yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe not. How do you like?
But I support friends all the time. Like if I make a relationship with you and you make something cool, I want to buy more of your stuff. Like Zach from Mythos Pedals, I want to buy some more of his stuff. Greg and Barry and Eric at XTS, I love their shit. Nick Greer, I'm a big fan of his stuff. The guys at Source Audio. I'm not just pandering. These are people that are friends that make really, really great stuff.
Well, I think we're on the same page with that. Like, there's no company here, except for the vintage stuff, that I don't have some sort of relationship with.
Right.
And I don't talk about stuff I don't really like, because I think it's, people look to maybe me and you to make a decision on something, right. And that's a big thing for me. So how do you like your Marshall? I've got my old, of course, pandemic, right? I turned on my Marshall the other day. It's like, I'm like,
oh no.
It's old amps. So it's obviously like a power tube, Hoger, Noetzel, and I sent the clip to Eli. He's like, sounds like a power tube. He's like, yeah, just throw in a new one, just rebias it. I'm like, dude, I don't have 4 power tubes, and how do I rebias an old Marshall? I can do this thing because we got the bias points on the back, but an old Marshall, I'm like, I'm not opening that thing. I'll kill myself, Yeah. So, of course, it happens now. So, my Marshall's out. So, bummer,
So that Marshall is, it's a 50 watt, 1974 watts, and I'm still kind of getting used to it. And it's really fun though. But part of me wishes that I got the 100 watt, that I found the 100 watt. But that was like an investment. It's a 74, super clean, and it's pretty cool sounding. I'm getting used to it. You've given me some tricks on how to dial Marshalls in, and if I ever do a gig on the road again, I might take it, just because a lot of the country rock stuff you never play clean. So it's like you might as well just try to use that. And I think it's ready to go for another 50 years. And I always wanted a 412 cabinet, so I found one of those and got one of those with it. Not vintage, it's new. And then I have
it doesn't sound as good.
Yeah. One of my favorite amps, that was 67 Princeton over there. Cool. And that thing, that's probably a Desert Island amp. I'd probably take that just over anything. And if
you had said something,
and Eli would
something on your Facebook page, and I think it's kind of, I do talk to people about this. They look at this stuff that we're sitting in front of and they go, like, you guys must be rich. And you're like, well, no. And first of all, so let's just address some of that, because I think people really, they get the thing. First of all, if you get a good guitar, like say something like the vintage guitar, this. I've had decent guitars a lot of my life when I became a professional. And then you make more friends, and then you trade this guitar for that. You trade up for that guitar. So this started with my first decent Fender Strat 30 years ago. You know what I'm saying? Okay, then you sell that to somebody who wants that guitar, and you upgrade and you start to do these things. And as your network of people spreads, and then you're willing to make some sacrifices on guitars that you're like, okay, this is a magical instrument. And then, you clear house on things, you trade gear for gear. I make it a real thing that I don't get into debt for gear. Like if I can't liquidate some stuff, then I'm just not going to do it. You know what I mean? Because I made that mistake many years ago. And so now I'm fortunate, but you accumulate enough things. And also the relationships with companies that people, I play Two Rocks because a number of reasons. I think they're amazing. And I play old Marshalls because it's an old Marshall, and then people like Two Rock is for me, it's an old Marshall, play an old Marshall. That's an old Marshall, Eli and those guys understand that. And Michael Tuttle makes my guitars. They're amazing. And so we work together, I use these on gigs and I'm playing on, just be blunt, it comes down to personal relationships with the company, and that if you're cool and they like you, but nobody can afford a Dumble. So if I'm fortunate enough to be on stage with Robin and we're doing workshops together and I have an amp that can get into that ballpark and do the same, some of their amps are designed around that schematic and not all of them. And then people are like, oh, well, I can get that. You know what I mean? So it's a very synergistic relationship. So I think people, it's working, they're working relationships is what I'm just getting at,
No, absolutely. I feel the same way. And I don't buy anything that isn't going to help me make money or make that company money, because we've both sold a lot of Two Rocks ourselves for the company. And that's not this kind of thing. It's like, no, it's our pleasure to do that because we believe in the brand.
Yeah. And you're on the road and they'll send you an amp to back you up. I mean, that is priceless.
I had somebody's wife message me on Instagram and say, I want to buy my husband the same PRS DGT that you have.
Right. Yep.
Exactly. There it is. That's one
That's
sale.
Exactly.
I get emails all the time. Hey, I'm going to buy a 018 because of your video.
Ambassador for a brand we care about. Yeah.
Exactly.
And it's fun. Like Matt Schofield. He lives down in Florida. He's like, he just borrows my amps for his East Coast tours. He's like, can I use your amp? I'm like, sure, of course. And Eli, it didn't pan out. Like Eli called me and said, can Doyle Bramhall borrow your amp? And I'm like, of course. So he and I exchanged some texts, but it just couldn't work out. But yeah, because it makes their life easier as well. And how cool is it to?
It is much nicer to have something that you feel good about when you get to the gig, because the last thing you want to worry about is sounding like shit on the gig that you traveled 2,000 miles to get to. So it's nice to have those luxuries for sure.
So yeah, I just sometimes people, you addressed it once, and because I think some people think
it's all shell game. It's all like, I'm going to move this to get this to get this
that,
to get
and
this.
Get that, and then you might extend yourself on something, but yeah. And so people have asked a lot. Like, how do you get all that gear? I'm like, well, it's 30 years in the business or 40 years. You know what I'm saying? and not being an asshole.
All those aux boxes, all those aux boxes that are behind me, they're here because a rep will say, hey, Keith Urban's tech wants to check out an aux. Can you take it to him? Yes, that's what it's here for.
Exactly.
Or if somebody comes over and we do a video, I have two that I can use. And they're on loan, because they're an ambassadorial, capacity.
Mm-hmm.
I have if the Kenny Chesney band would have gone on tour this year, every guitar player would have had an aux that I had something to do with.
Right.
And that's my pleasure to do that. Like, I want that to happen.
Yeah, of course, because they're doing right by us, and
exactly.
Of course.
Exactly.
All right, see if there's any. Wow, we still have a ton of people on, and
it was like 200.
270. Right? It's the most people are on right now. Woo! Well, first of all, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. I'm just going to give the pitch again. Now that everything is in the description, we have a tip jar. I split it with Corey. It's really helpful for us, and as you've noticed Corey's progression is my audio and my video is way better than it was when I first started doing this. Corey's audio and video is way better than it was. You notice that everybody's telling me Corey looks and sounds amazing. It's because we've made the investment through help from people like you supporting what we're doing to be able to upgrade what we're doing. So we really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And allows us to keep doing things like YouTube channels, which people think, oh, the YouTube channel, people get rich on that. Yeah, some people do, but we're not getting with like the revenue share. People think, oh, PewDiePie is a multi-million. I'm like, well, yeah, but it takes a long time to get there. So it's a big investment on our time, and
it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. A lot of work.
Yeah, like you're coming through me on speaking about things that that you go in debt for. Mm-hmm. More about the computer that I'm broadcasting through than any of these guitars, for sure. And those are the things where you're just like, shit, I can't believe I got to buy a new computer. And I was working fine on one from 2013. Yeah. You want to be in the game, you got to buy the tech to do that. It's so nice to click on something and just have it come up now, as opposed to like, okay, I got to do this preference and I got to stand on one leg while I do it.
I'm looking at my, people don't understand what's going on here. We have a broadcast software, and it took a while to really dial this in, and I've had some great help support in the community, my friend Hermano, who's on here. And I'm looking at, my CPU level is this, you know what I mean? It's super low, where my old computer, I was like, I can't do this. My computer's about to explode. So, okay, I don't know if anybody really cares about that stuff. But anyway, Corey has all his links there. for his YouTube page, his channel at TrueFire. I will have a channel soon. I promise. It's coming up. TrueFire. Brad was like, "What are you doing? What is?" So it's what slowed me down was everything started. So now the YouTube stuff and getting involved. So now it will be live soon. I've been filming more videos. It's going well, so that will be live soon. And it'll be very similar to Corey's. A lot of things like that I can talk about in lessons, or like a very strong resource, I believe, of guided things. Like, okay, here's what you need. It's almost like here's what you need to know,
right.
in my mind. Also, you have that great Martin giveaway. So if you check out your website and your new course at TrueFire, which coincides with that. And all my courses are on sale if you use the Live25 code over at TrueFire. If you go through our websites, you can get our courses, and we definitely see that. And I've noticed, guys, we notice it right away. And we've said about TrueFire, they're great people. There's never been, like, I can look at in real time what's happened. And I really appreciate everybody who has bought a course, and Corey does too, because we really see that money directly. It makes a direct impact on our lives.
And the cool thing about TrueFire in particular is that they've even stepped their game up with outreach to people like us, the instructors, paying us at a sooner rate. Making sure that we have income coming in.
They've been they've been amazing.
And they were on it day 3.
Yeah.
Like, incredible, really, really good. I mean, you and I, we both have Martin had a promo. Mm-hmm. With you bought a Martin, you got a 90-day pass to TrueFire and one of my courses for free. This month is PRS sponsorship, where I called a couple people and I was like, hey, let's try to do something. And now I think next week might be next month might be a special month with some amplifiers that we enjoy too. Yep. I don't want to spill the beans, but could be really cool.
Yeah, could be cool.
As far So they're on it. They're super.
Yeah. So let's see if any more questions.
Actually, I'll be doing a live stream with them next week. It's Tony McManus, David Grissom, and me. So
the PRS one. Yeah.
This event. Yes, that'll be really, really cool.
Okay, you just talk about our stream, the live things that we're doing. I do a regular 4 o'clock Eastern time every Wednesday, and I just kind of teach a lesson and answer questions. And then you do one as well at 1 o'clock Eastern time, or
it's 2 Eastern
1 o'clock Central
on Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a random. I pick a little topic, just like you probably do 30 minutes, and then I just do a free for all Q&A shootout. Last week we did it on arpeggios, like some of the stuff we did today, and then the week before that was don't get overwhelmed by overdrive. So I played like 20 overdrive pedals, and it was fun. I had like this massive layout of pedals. It was a blast.
Oh, it was fun. I caught some of that one. Okay, so I think we should just wrap it up because we've been on for pushing 2 hours.
Man.
Yeah, right. We've been on for an hour and 48 minutes. So I really appreciate everyone. Once again, please, please, please like my Instagram page. Instagram, all the social media, TrueFire. Sorry. Okay. Too many things. Instagram, Facebook, like those, one thing at a time. If you could like and subscribe my YouTube page right here, and hit the notification, the bell, so when I go live and all the things, you get notifications. And please, go over to Corey's page and do the same thing. And then, which is also a lot of Corey's people have come over here. We have a lot of crossover people. Just both sides. Do the same for both of us. We'd really appreciate it. So I want to thank Corey. So you have the giveaway. Okay, hold on. Here's the schedule coming up. Next Wednesday is I'm doing my lesson online with the lockdown at 4 p.m. You're doing yours at 2 o'clock Eastern time on Thursday, every Thursday. And then Robin Ford's next weekend for the lockdown. That's for the conversation. So this time, 11 a.m.
Should have a handful of people on for that.
At one time? No. Oh, my God.
No. Yeah.
No, thank you. And then I will be, we hit 100 likes in here. Thank you so much. 102, thank you. And then the following week is Scott Sherrard. And then we have Andy Wood lined up. I'm going to give Jason Laughlin a do-over because he was my first guest, and it was an audio disaster. So I want to give him the do-over because it was echoes flying around, and it was me learning the ropes. So I feel like he he should definitely get a second chance because he's the guy who suffered through that with me until I dialed it in. And I talked to Josh Smith. He's going to do it. I got to get Josh on the phone. And so, all the guys that you probably want to hear from. And then also repeat guys. I want to have Corey back on. It's going to be a continuing thing. I might not do it every week after the lockdown's over, hopefully. But it's definitely a lot of fun. So thanks, everyone, for being here. And Corey, got anything you want to say before you check out?
No, I think you covered it all. You can always, when you go into my YouTube channel, you can see in the description all the fun links that you can do to support, whether it's courses or merchandise or TrueFire Channel or any of that kind of stuff. I try to really parcel out the lessons between platforms, so you're always going to get something fresh, whether it be YouTube or my TrueFire Channel or a course. Right. If there's a tab or a track that you heard that I said is available, feel free to email me and I'll send it to you free of charge.
Yeah. Yeah, same here. I try to post them as well. Also, one last thing, join our mailing lists, things like that. This really helps us get news out to you. And just if you like what we do, this is how you can support us. So once again, thank you, everybody. Thanks so much, Corey, for coming on. I really appreciate it, man. And all right, I'll see you guys. I'll see you on Wednesday. Corey will see you on Thursday, and I'll see you next Saturday. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you.
Okay.